Hi learners, welcome to our lesson 3 of the topic water and hydrogen. In our lesson 3, we are going now to look at the other part of the topic. Previously, we have been looking at hydrogen, the preparation of hydrogen gas, the collection of hydrogen gas, the drying of hydrogen gas, and also the chemical properties of hydrogen gas. So in our lesson 3 now, we are going to look at water now. So we start by looking at water. So we can see how we can prepare water in the laboratory. So we say that most organic substances or fluents burn in air to produce water. But insufficient or in excess air, there will also be production of carbon dioxide. So when we burn most of organic substances in air, we produce two substances, that is carbon dioxide and water. So in our laboratory, we use a candle. A candle is an organic substance. And when we burn a candle, we form two products, that is carbon dioxide and water. So in this experiment here, we are going to see how burning a candle, or we are going to prove that when we burn a candle, we produce carbon dioxide and water. So when we burn our candle here, the products formed will be moving in this delivery tube. The first product will be collected in the first test tube A. Then there will be anhydrous copper 2 sulfate that will be in test tube A. That will be used to test for the products that will be formed in test tube A. The other product will be moving again from this first test tube through this delivery tube to the other test tube B. So the other product will now be collected in the other test tube here, where there is lime water, or the other name of lime water is calcium hydroxide solution. So the second product will be tested using lime water here in test tube B. Then excess gas that will be remaining in this test tube now will be removed by the pump, the suction, to prevent it from flowing back. We are going to see the reason. So this experiment here is to demonstrate that two products, that is water and carbon dioxide, are formed when a candle burns in air. So we say when a candle itself is made up of carbon and hydrogen as the only elements. So any substance that is formed by carbon and hydrogen as its only elements, we call that substance a hydrocarbon. So a candle is a hydrocarbon. Then when a candle wax is burnt in air, it produces two products, that is water and carbon dioxide. Then the reason we use this inverted funnel here is to prevent the gaseous products from escaping to the air. So all the products that will be formed in this by the burning of this candle will be collected and now will move through the delivery tube. So the inverted funnel will prevent the gaseous products from escaping to the air and allows them to pass through the delivery tube. The role of ice cold water. This is the ice cold water in a beaker here. So this is ice cold water. The reason we have this ice cold water, or the purpose of the ice cold water, is to condense the water vapor formed into liquid, meaning the liquid that we are going to collect here will be water. So the purpose of ice cold water is to condense the water vapor into liquid form. So the other gas now will be carbon dioxide. It will not condense. It will move through this other delivery tube, then to this other test tube B here. Then it will react with lime water or the calcium hydroxide solution to form a white precipitate of calcium carbonate. calcium carbonate is insoluble in water, so it will be a white precipitate. A white precipitate, we said it's a milky substance. Yes, it looks like chalk. It's white, it's a solid, so it proves that whatever is formed is insoluble. So there will be formation of white precipitate here, and then again the excess carbon dioxide will be removed by the pump. So it will be removed to the suction pump to prevent it from flowing back. Let us look at the next slide. So the role of anhydrous copper 2 sulfate, we said, is to test for water. Its color turns from white to blue. The role of calcium hydroxide is to test for the presence of carbon dioxide. We have seen that, and we have said it forms a white precipitate. We are going to look at the equation in a question later. The pump removes the excess carbon dioxide. If the pump is closed or it is not functioning, the carbon dioxide would flow back and put off the burning candle. So the pump or the suction pump must be functioning. It must be available and it must be functioning. This is to prevent the flow back of carbon dioxide. Yes, that will put off the burning candle. In test tube A, we have seen that a colorless liquid will be formed. The colorless liquid is water. And in test tube B, a white precipitate is formed. That will show the presence of carbon dioxide. The white precipitate is due to the formation of calcium carbonate. So this is an experiment that concludes that when we burn a candle, it produces two products, that is carbon dioxide and water, and we have proved that. So we have two questions here. These are KCSE questions 2019-2020. So maybe we can start by answering the first one. We have a setup here. Study the setup in figure 6 and answer the questions that follows. So we have our burning candle here, then our delivery tube, then our first test tube P, then we have ice cold water. Again, we have another delivery tube to test tube Q that is containing calcium hydroxide solution. So, name the substance that was collected in test tube P. So we have said in this first test tube, we are going to collect a colorless liquid. The colorless liquid is water. So the first product that will be formed in test tube P, we can say is water. Water. Then we are told in B, write an equation for the reaction which occurs in test tube Q in the first few minutes of the experiment. So in test tube Q, where we have calcium hydroxide solution, we said calcium hydroxide solution is going to react with carbon dioxide. So we are going to collect carbon dioxide in our test tube Q that will react now with calcium hydroxide. So we said calcium hydroxide reacts with carbon dioxide to produce calcium carbonate, the insoluble calcium carbonate, and water. So let us write that equation here. We are going to write it here. So we have carbon dioxide gas plus calcium this calcium hydroxide. So we have calcium hydroxide solution. It is aqueous. Then this will give us two products, that is calcium carbonate, the solid, plus water. Water is a liquid. So that will be the reaction that will be taking place in test tube Q. So give a suitable conclusion for the experiment. So what can this experiment conclude? So this experiment can conclude, from this experiment we can conclude that a candle or burning a candle produces two substances, that is carbon dioxide and water, and we have proven that because we are going to test that the liquid formed here is water by the use of anhydrous calcium sulfate, anhydrous copper 2 sulfate, and it will turn from white to blue. That will be the test that the liquid formed here is water, and in test tube Q we are going to see a white precipitate, meaning that carbon dioxide is formed here, and when it reacts with calcium hydroxide it forms a white precipitate. So we can conclude from the experiment that when we burn a candle, the products formed are carbon dioxide and water. Let us look at this other question here. Study the setup in figure 1 and then answer the questions that follows. We are burning a candle again. This is a funnel, then a delivery tube. We have solid B, so we can tell what is solid B. Then again another delivery tube to another test tube here where we have calcium hydroxide solution, then to this is a suction pump to C, to apparatus C. So that is to the suction pump. So at the end of the experiment, solid B changed from white to blue. Explain. So solid B here must be anhydrous copper 2 sulfate. This is what changes from white to blue when reacted with water. When we burn a candle, we form two products. The first product to be collected will be water. Water will turn copper 2 sulfate, anhydrous copper 2 sulfate, from white to blue. So at the end of the experiment, solid B, which is anhydrous copper 2 sulfate, changed from white to blue because water had been formed, and water turns the color of anhydrous copper 2 sulfate from white to blue. Then the other product of burning a candle formed a white precipitate with calcium hydroxide solution. Write an equation. So we have written the equation in the previous question. We have said that in this test tube here, we are going to have the reaction between carbon dioxide and calcium hydroxide solution. So the equation will be between calcium hydroxide solution in aqueous form and carbon dioxide gas to give us calcium carbonate plus water. So that is the reaction. We are going to repeat the reaction here. Then we are told to state the role of apparatus C. So the role of apparatus C is to remove the excess carbon dioxide that did not react with calcium hydroxide solution. And we said the reason we are removing the excess carbon dioxide is to prevent the carbon dioxide from flowing back to the candle, which will put it off. So that is the role of the apparatus C. That is the end of our lesson 3. And let's meet again to see the reaction. In lesson 4, we are going to look at the reaction of water, cold and water vapor with metals. Thank you.